Hi, friends. Welcome back to Brave New Frontier. Thank you so much for being here, where we talk about creatives doing creative stuff in a creative world and just how to get better in our niche. And today we are talking with the lovely and wonderful Allison Ramirez. She's the founder of Trinity Tree Publishing, and she's a friend of mine, and I know that she is awesome. So, hello, Allison.
Hello, thanks so much, Gabriella, for having me on Brave New Frontiers.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. This is going to be such a blast. So, Trinity Tree Publishing, you're an editor. That's an editing freelance. I always forget the word, but like a company. It's your editing freelance company.
Right, yeah, so it started off with my books because I was like publishing one book and I realized I was actually part of the Fiat Self Publishing Academy that is actually since disbanded and now it's, I think, called Catholic Business Buddy. Kate Franz runs it. And I was part of that academy for Catholic independently publishing authors. And she's like, if you're publishing a book, you should probably have like an actual business associated with it. Because she's like, you're selling things and you have a product. So that's like a business. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that before. And so, yeah, I was like, I guess I should actually have an official like legal business set up for my writing. And so it took me several years to actually be able to get it off the ground. But yeah, this year in January, I officially legally set it up as Trinity Tree Publishing. And it's nice because when I publish my books, instead of saying like independently published by Allison Ramirez, I can have my name, Trinity Tree Publishing. And then my editing also falls under that too.
That's so awesome. And it sounds like you and I had a very similar experience because I also just started out wanting to publish my books. And then my mentor told me you need to get like a trade name. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, it was Crown of Thorns and Roses Press. And like you said, it's so much better to say than like you go on Amazon to publish and you're like, who's the publisher? Self published or independently published.
Mm-hmm.
You get to put Trinity Tree Publishing, or, I'm rebranding now. So Bone Piercer Media or Bone Piercer Press.
Oh, okay.
So I'm really excited to be able to talk about this more because, earlier I was interviewing a lovely young woman, Lori Nash, who instituted the Society of Catholic Imagineers and Inklings. They are teens who do all kind of creative stuff together, and they're awesome. And I felt a little bit out of my depth, because
Mm-hmm.
she's doing so many things that I don't know much about. But I feel like I am really going to be able to get into this conversation because I think I've kind of been in the same trenches as you have.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit. You told me about your origin story, like a one specific moment where something kind of clicked, where either you decided, yeah, I'm for sure going to go indie, or I'm for sure going to take this and then continue on with editing, freelancing. Was there one moment where it just kind of pushed you forward?
Hmm. Yeah, I guess it was after I published my first book back in 2021. It's a rosary devotional journal because I had that idea and I was like, well, am I only going to write one book or am I going to write, multiple books? And I had a bunch of other ideas. And so I thought, okay, this is going to be just, more than one book. Like some people have a certain topic, and they just want to have their one book out there and other people are like prolific writers and that was more me. And so I thought, well, this is going to be built into something is the way I saw it. Like, what some people say, building your brand or building your image. And I thought, okay, like maybe I should actually get this like an umbrella for this all to go under. And I didn't have the name Trinity Tree Publishing back then, but I started to realize I was going to be doing more than just writing one book. And then part of that process of getting my first book published, I was learning all the ins and outs. And I thought, well, how much of this can I do myself? And, not
Hmm.
have to necessarily pay someone for, or at least not pay as much as I would have if I didn't, learn some of these skills. And I knew cover design was out because I'm not a very like visually graphically inclined person.
I am the same way. I don't
Okay.
touch my own covers. I can do
Yeah.
the rest. I'm not touching a cover.
Same with me. And so I was like, well, editing. Like I took some grammar classes in college and I could probably figure that out more. And so I was doing research and like I found a proofreading course that I took that was fairly inexpensive. And I was reading a lot of books and watching a lot of YouTube and yeah, just various sources. And I realized that I'm like, oh, I could probably actually learn this pretty well, if I devote some time to it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that could also be part of my business. Cause at the time, I was also kind of thinking like, what's my career going to be? Because I graduated from college in 2019 2019. Yep. And so it was 2021, 2020. Like I started working on my book. And so I was also figuring out like, what am I going to do for a living? So it all just kind of worked out where I was trying to, I guess, self discovery of like myself as an adult and my career path and my interests. And then, yeah, slowly but surely, the editing became part of it over time. And I started writing more books. And then at the end of last year is when I was trying to come up with a name. And
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Tell me about the name.
the name. So yeah, so Trinity Tree. I really like alliteration. Like I wanted a name that was going to be easy to remember. And so I liked the way that just kind of flows off the tongue. And I wanted something that was going to show people that I write like Christian books. Like that was important to me. So I wanted, like, I was looking like common words in the Bible for different things, you know, and a lot of them were taken already, like really good, you know, like words that you would associate with Christianity.
Yeah.
And then I was also discerning. I'm like, well, do I want to just have a very Catholic esque, like similar word, or just more generically Christian? I was like struggling with that too because I am a Catholic author, but I usually kind of brand myself as like Christianity in general. But yeah, and so I was like, you know, the Trinity is kind of the foundation of like any Christianity, you know. And I was like, okay, like my writing can reveal like God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? It's like a tenet of the faith, but it's also like a mystery. Like, how does that work? And yeah, so I really and I love the symbol like of the Trinity. And so I thought, okay. And then I also really like nature. Like I'm in the Pacific Northwest and I have a lot of nature themes in my writing. And so I started thinking about like the Garden of Eden, you know, like where it all began. And I was like, I started thinking of like the tree of knowledge of good and evil and thinking about how like stories are like seeds that can grow into a tree. And there's like, it can branch in so many directions and people can gain so much from, you know, one singular story. So that was all going through my head. And then I think my husband actually was the one that told me, like, he came up with like the actual Trinity Tree phrase, like putting them together. Like I had those two ideas and he was like, oh, what about Trinity Tree? I'm like, oh, that sounds really good actually. And then I just
Nice.
added publishing to the end so people know it's like not just like books, but it's the process, like with like helping people with editing. And I also do like writing coaching as well for people who are interested. So mentoring, that sort of thing. So it all kind
That's
of falls under.
really, really awesome. And I loved what you were saying before about how you were learning. You know, you took your classes in college and then you went and you took a course, but you were reading the books and you were
Mm-hmm.
watching the YouTube videos. And I was just, again, like that was how I learned. That was how I learned to write. And I think that's really cool about my profession is that you don't necessarily need this like very specific type of advanced degree only
Mm-hmm.
thing to be qualified because ours is really about learning the craft, but then immersing and getting used to it and knowing it. And so I was just curious, is there anyone, like any one specific YouTuber or one book that really helped you that like you really refer back to or it has stuck with you as you've been learning about
Yeah.
editing and writing?
That's a good question. And I really like what you were just saying about like how to learn to become an editor because that was really hard for me because I realized there's nothing out there like how to become a Christian editor, for example. Or like and even like I would reach out to people for like saying, "Oh, can you like mentor me?" And a lot of them were like, "Oh, yes, but for a fee." You know, and I was like, "I don't have all this money to be spending." And so there wasn't really any like courses or programs that were like a how to for being even just a Christian editor, let alone, you know, Catholic editor. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, let's see. So the Academy, it's called, now it's called, I think, Nowadays, Nowadays or
No,
Proofreading
it is.
Academy. That was the one that I took their course. And they actually have like a copy editing and like copywriting, proofreading. I want to say they're fairly inexpensive, like maybe like $100, $150. That was like what I started out with, and that was super helpful because they have like modules and they have like practice paragraphs that you can edit and everything. Um, and then even at the end, if you pass their test, they like let you like be like a freelancer for them as well, which is kind of
That's
nice. I think they
exciting.
still do that. At least they had that when I was looking at that back in like 2021. I also like looked at the style guides that I thought I was going to be using because
Yes.
a lot of people don't realize that there's different style guides. Like,
Mhm.
you know, you'll ask like a client, are you using the Chicago manual style, which is pretty popular? Or there's let's see,
Like
MLA.
MLA.
There's like the USCCB has one, and some
Do they really? That's right. I have seen that actually. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, like I started familiarizing myself because they have their own rules, like, for grammar or spelling or capitalization and stuff like that. Like they even have an online version, which I paid like the yearly like $40 fee. It's the basically the big giant Chicago manual style, but it's all
Huge,
virtual.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge, and you can just click through. Like it's really intuitive to be like, okay, how do I use ellipses here, for example, and you can click.
Exactly, versus flipping through this gigantic tome. It's a little bit of a
Mm-hmm.
funny story. So when I was in college, a lot of the work that I did was MLA, and
Okay. Yeah.
I was the only person who ever checked out that manual from the library because the first time I ordered it, it was a brand new spine, had not been cracked copy. And then
Wow.
the next time I ordered it, the spine was still as stiff as me having been careful with it the first time.
Yeah.
And so when I went to go check out the Chicago manual, I was like, it's probably about the size of the MLA manual, maybe this thick. And then I got it and it was like just massive. It was a brick. And so, yeah, that's a great opportunity that you took advantage of to be able to do
Mhm.
the online thing where you can just search it. Being able to just reference things off the top of your head, having practiced enough, done it enough that you know exactly what it is, that saves you the time of then even having to go for the search.
Definitely. And the nice thing about the online version is it's always being updated, right? So if you buy the book and it's like 2 years later they have a new edition, you're like, oh, do I have
Oh,
to buy a new book?
right.
But it will automatically like it updates it in the online system. So it'll say, here are
Nice.
the new changes that have been made. Like I think recently I saw that they had put a new tab and they said there were several new changes, maybe even in the past 6 months or so.
Yeah.
Oh, I
I
better
remember going to that
go for
meeting
those.
where they updated everybody.
Yeah, yep. So that was a good resource. I know there's a YouTuber. I think she writes just like maybe like secular books, but she actually has her own editing company. Her name's Natalia Lee, and she's also an independently published author. And she does a lot of videos where she does like editing hacks. So I learned a lot from those too. Like she'll say like how to get started as an editor, and she has a lot of good resources on her YouTube channel.
That's great. I have not heard of her, so I'm definitely gonna have to go check her out.
Yeah, I think you'd actually like a lot of her books too. Like she's I don't know that I don't think she's a Christian author, but she writes a lot of like I think similar type themes that I've seen in your book. So you actually might like a lot of her
Oh,
writing.
cool. I am definitely gonna have to check her out. That sounds fun. Okay, so we've talked about all of the awesome work that you've been doing all this time to build up your company, which, as I understand, has been having a little bit of a boom recently. I think it was in a newsletter. You said something about the projects that you've been able to get recently.
Yes, yeah. So 4 years actually on April 6th, it'll be 4 years since I like started pursuing the freelance editing. And yeah, the first year, I think the first 1 to 2 years, I really was just trying to figure it out, right? And then yeah, like this year specifically, I've been getting a lot more interest. Like people have been reaching out to me, and different companies that I've been working with have been sending me more work. And that's been really good to see because yeah, it's like kind of trial and error, right? Like you just put
Yeah.
your name out there and you have like a link to your website, your editing services, and you're wondering like, is anyone gonna reach out and like fill out your form? And it was nice too because I have a YouTube channel and somebody filled out my form, my editing form, and said, "Oh, I found you on YouTube." And I was like, "Oh, really?"
Nice.
And I hadn't even posted on there in a while. And so it's like things that you do, like seeds that you plant. Like if you speak at conferences and you like talk about that you're an editor or different events, or if you have like social media, like that stuff like stays there. And so people might find you, like yeah, like a year or two or more later. And you're like, oh, I forgot that I had talked about my editing over here. So I think the more places that you kind of get your name out, like over time, like you'll get more interest. That's what I've been finding, I think the reason why I've been getting more people reaching out. And then too, like if you edit for someone and they're really happy with your work, they might refer their friends. I've had that happen as well, where I've gotten people because I had edited one of their friends' work. And so, like, referrals, I think, helps a lot too.
That's fantastic. And it's probably very encouraging to a lot of people. I know it's encouraging to me, just that all the effort that you're putting in, even if it takes a minute, it's doing something. Like it is
Mhm.
effective. It's because sometimes I don't know if this is just my experience or if it's yours too, but there are moments where it can feel kind of futile. Like, what am I doing with all this work and it's not seeming to bear much fruit? But it
Mhm.
is. You just gotta give it a second. Gotta let it grow.
Yep. When finding your niche too, because like for me, like because I'm more, I guess I'm now starting to move out of like beginner to more intermediate in the sense of number of years I've been doing this. But at first, like because my rates and they're still very like cost effective, and so I'll get people that maybe can't afford someone that's got 20 years of experience, and so people will take a chance on you more when you're new and you're starting out. Of course, from a financial standpoint, it's harder because you're still doing a lot of work and you're not getting a whole lot of money from it, but it's
Yeah.
really good in terms of honing your skills. And then you also are helping out people that if they didn't find someone like you, they wouldn't even be able to get editing for their book because they couldn't
Right.
afford someone else. And so yeah, that I think has helped me like build relationships. And yeah, like I've had authors that are like, if I hadn't found you, like I never would have been able to get editing for my book. And like,
That's got to be the best feeling.
so that's been really, yeah, really great. And like, yeah,
Good.
building relationships with, yeah, like editing clients I've had where they'll follow up with me again and be like, my book like is released now. Like usually I try to profile like people I've worked with like on my newsletter and like say,
Mhm.
hey, their book is out now. And like they'll be like, I got my first review, and like
Oh,
it's
that's
it's so
awesome.
fun to like be part of it beyond just the editing. Like you kind of see like what becomes of the book.
Yeah, exactly. Because like, as editors, we're not just people who go in and fix the mistakes in your writing.
Mhm.
We're like your battle buddies. We're the people. We're mentors in our own way. We're kind of guiding you through. All right, here's how we hone this, and here's how we move you on to the next piece.
Mhm.
So,
Exactly.
what is something that, like, I can think of a bunch of things, but I want to hear from you. What are some things that you specifically bring to the table that not a lot of other people are doing? What is special about you and Trinity
Hmm.
Tree Publishing? You did touch on a bunch of things, but I just guess I want to put them all in a package.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, so I work with any author, but I really like to work specifically with Christian Catholic authors, and I actually have degrees in English and theology. So I think that that's a unique perspective because I like if someone's working on a fiction piece, I still have like a theology background, so
Yeah.
it just like helps me I think to like have both of those, which I think is unique because not everyone who is like an editor or has like an English writing background also has a theology, or maybe like they have the theology but not the English. So having both has helped me to be able to take on a lot of different projects because I feel confident to look at like an academic, like, like Christian piece because I have that academic background. But then I also feel confident to work on fiction because I have a creative writing background too. So I think it makes it unique in that I can feel confident to take on both nonfiction and fiction. That helps me in that.
That is fantastic. And those are skill sets that not a lot of people have. You are like the combination of that skill set is
Mhm.
not something that, a bunch of people have. There are people who they know their theology, but then, how are they going to get into the fiction? Or
Right.
they have the fiction, but are they going to be able to give you that, like, still maintaining the faith in it?
Mhm.
And so they're able to just kind of rest assured with you, which is really nice. It's really nice when you can go to your editor and just be rest assured.
Right. And I do try to help out, like if people are worried about theological things, like I can try to give them some insight or at least some of my thoughts on it.
Which I imagine is probably a point of stress for a lot of Christian Catholic authors, because it's like you're writing this book, but you really, I imagine a lot of people really want to be careful. I want to be careful,
Hmm.
but I know that, like, even beyond my wanting to be careful, there are people who are like scared almost. They want to be
Right.
careful
It's
because it's
important
just
to
so
have them.
important to them. And so then you are able to take that weight off their shoulders because it's like, okay, well, if I did make a mistake, someone's going to fix it. Allison's going to fix it.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a very yeah, it's like a dance, right? Like it's like you
Yeah.
want to be authentic,
Hmm.
in what you're saying. Like you don't want to sugarcoat things, but you also don't want to like give people the wrong idea about what you're right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuance to it. It's
There
yeah.
is.
A
So
dance.
how do you dance that line? Is there like a specific thing that you keep in mind? Because I know that, man, that is a tricky tightrope to walk.
Right.
So is there something that you specifically hold on to or keep in the front of your mind as you're trying to help other authors or even in your own work navigate this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's definitely easier with fiction when it comes to the faith because people are at least hopefully they're realizing it's a fictional story. And it's like you're watching characters that are, you know, made up people and they're in these made up situations. So people are going to be more, I guess, forgiving, or they're going to be more understanding if things are more out of the box, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're writing like a nonfiction and you're saying, I'm trying to teach you about the Trinity, you know, or the saint, like people are not, it's probably not going to fly if you have all these errors or like,
Right.
you know, like things that are not correct. And so that's something to keep in mind. Like people that are writing fiction, I think they can breathe a little easier. But
Hmm.
even with fiction, I think, because I think there's a difference between writing a character that is, you know, away from the faith, or they don't believe, or they're doing all these things, because that's real life. That's, you know, with
Yeah.
people. But I think if the book is kind of glorifying that or making it seem like that's how it should be, I
Hmm.
think that's where it gets different. Because some people, I think, have a problem with just seeing like, you know, corrupt characters, or like,
Yeah.
but I feel like that is just real life. And so I
Yeah.
think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually good, because that people can really see themselves or their family or their friends in these characters. And then, but I think showing like how is the character wrestling with that? Like maybe they're,
Right.
not to say that by the end they're like 100% like now they're all on board with Christianity. Like I also don't think that's always realistic, but showing some change in them,
Yeah.
something has to be different, you know, from the beginning to the end. Yeah, that would be my advice.
That is excellent advice. I love it. All right, so I am going to ask one last question, and then if you have anything that you want to talk about, I would love to. But from my end, the last question is going to be, what is a recent event that kind of either pushed you forward into a new direction or really made a difference in the direction that you're already going? Like, what's something kind of new that's happened?
Well, I guess in terms of legally starting my business, I'm having to figure out like the legal side of it. And that is new to me, because before, since I didn't have any, like I still like with tax season, right? Like I was still saying what I was doing, but I didn't have to worry about it being like labeled as like a business. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, I think it asked me like, oh, do you do any like self-employed work? So I put it like
Mm-hmm.
under that. But now it's like I have to, like every quarter, like every 3 months, I have to report to my state, like what I'm like my taxes and everything. And like I'm trying to figure all that out. And it's
And
been,
that is not fun, is it?
yeah, no. And actually, I think they told me that the first quarter is ending at the end of this month. So that I think I have to file by the end of next month. And every
Okay.
state's different. But yeah, like figuring out the ins and outs of that, like, you know, when to like renew my business license, or like, yeah, where do I pay and when do I pay and how do I report all this? That's kind of been new to me, which again, like I guess I'm learning some new skill sets. I'm kind of learning a little bit about business because I don't have a business background, but in a sense I am running a business. So it's helpful to, yeah, that's a new direction for me, since legally it was January 1st that I started with the Trinity Tree Publishing name and everything, and set all that up with my, I guess, with the government.
And you're right. Just like I was just thinking how you're talking about, you have your background in English, you have your background in theology, and business wasn't a part of that, but
Yeah.
now it has to be. And I think that's kind of just our lives, right? We are always having to learn something new, having to figure, and that's great. It's
Mm-hmm.
tedious at moments, but it really is great because we're always learning a new skill set. We're always getting better at what we do. There's the trial and error, and I think that's also another like opening where it's like you don't have to feel like you have to have a very specified, very specific official degree for every component in what you're doing in freelancing or in editing because you'd need a million degrees.
Mm-hmm.
You would need your business degree. You would need some kind of legal know-how. You would need your marketing something. And so it's like it's just about kind of diving in and
Mm-hmm.
learning, learning to swim.
Yeah, same thing with when you're writing your stories and you're having to come up with a scene about your character. Is like in my stories, they're always somebody's like on a boat. I'm like, I don't know anything about boats. Like, what are these parts of the boat called? And like, you know, like the terms they would be saying. Like, now I can just tell you these random facts about boats, you know, like,
Exactly. It's so funny. Slight tangent, but I was doing kind of like an off the cuff project a while ago involving the ocean. Now, at the time, I had never gone to the ocean. And I then I went to the ocean. Then I came back and looked at that story and I was like, I just described a glorified lake because, the ocean is so much different. So just yeah, all these things that you don't know about but you're always learning,
mm-hmm.
that's the challenge, but also the fun, honestly, to
Right?
me.
Yeah, and I think the writer is the ultimate jack of all trades.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so before we close out, is there anything that you got to say to us?
I just appreciate the chance to be on and yeah, to kind of share a little bit about my journey and what I do. I'm all about supporting other creatives too. So this is a lot of fun for me because yeah, I had you on my own podcast
Yeah.
like a few weeks back, and so I just love being able to like be a team with others that are in this as well. Like I think it's really important to cheer each other on and support one another. So everyone who's listening, I hope that you feel supported as well and that you can find your community in this writing endeavor.
And that is what we are all about. And thank you for that amazing conclusion, Allison. Friends, for all of you watching, her link is down below. So if you need editing, if you want to check out her books, go ahead, check out Trinity Tree Publishing. She's awesome, you can tell. And yeah, thank you for being here today. If you enjoyed this episode, you're going to enjoy our past episode. There's one right here. This is going to be Lori Nash. Remember, I was talking about her earlier in her endeavors with the Society of the Catholic Imagineers and Inklings. You want to hear me just get learned at? You want to hear me just learning stuff that I have no idea about? Go on over to that one. I think you will really enjoy it. And if you want to hear more about someone who does know about editing, if you want to hear a second editing video, you can check out the video where I was interviewed and we talk about my books and my editing. So thank you guys so much for being here today. And yeah, stay creative. Okay.